Viewers, West Asia is on the knife's edge. Recent days have seen an escalation on all fronts. One miscalculation, one mistake can lead to the unthinkable, a full-scale regional conflict. Is the rocket attack on Israel's Golan Heights that one mistake? Well, Israel's Foreign Minister Israel Katz believes so. Blaming Hezbollah for the attack, Katz says the Iran-backed militant group has crossed the line this time. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has cut short his trip to the US. He has made it clear that Israel won't let the incident pass in silence and said Hezbollah will pay a heavy price. Now, as per figures cited by Israeli Defense Forces in Hezbollah's aggression since October 8th last year, 22 Israeli soldiers, 23 civilians have been killed. However, during the same duration, over 100 civilians have been killed in Israeli strikes in Lebanon. On Saturday, 4 were killed in a strike on the southeastern village of Kafir Killa. The killed were affiliated with different armed groups, with at least one of them belonging to Hezbollah. Hassan Nasrallah, Secretary General of the militant group, has said it would end its attacks if there was a ceasefire deal in Gaza. Similarly, Yemen's Houthi rebels have urged Israel to end its military campaign in the Strip and lift the siege of the Palestinian enclave, failing which they say they will launch an open war against the country. In an attack by an Iranian-made drone on Tel Aviv earlier this month, one person was killed and at least 10 were wounded. On the Gaza front, over 39,000 Palestinians have been killed since the war began last year. Egyptian, Qatari and United States mediators are to meet Israeli negotiators in Rome today for a discussion on the hostages for ceasefire deal. But does Israel even want peace? That's the question. The Netanyahu-led country continues its operations in Gaza. On Saturday, at least 30 people were killed and over 100 others injured after an Israeli airstrike hit a school housing displaced people in Deir al-Balah. We are now being joined by Ms. Ruthie Bloom from Tel Aviv. She is a former advisor at the Office of Prime Minister Netanyahu and award-winning columnist. Ms. Bloom, thank you so much for joining us, making time and joining us here on the broadcast. Of course, I want to, just get to the question immediately. At this point, a lot of attacks are coming towards Israel from multiple fronts. We, of course, saw the attack which took place weeks ago, which landed in the heart of Israel. That came from the Houthi rebels from Yemen. And, of course, this deadly attack, which has now come, of course, from Hezbollah. Not from Hezbollah, not that they have confirmed. Of course, this is what Israel believes, that it came from Hezbollah that landed in the Golan Heights. I want to understand from you, at this point, how do you expect Israel to respond? Because the other side wants them to pressurize them to look for a ceasefire deal in Gaza. Do you think Israel will agree to that, or is there going to be a counterstrike?
Okay, first of all, we do know it was a Hezbollah fire, and we know that because the missile was an Iranian missile. It has been determined already, and it's an Iranian missile that is supplied to Hezbollah from Tehran. So that's first of all. Second of all, because Israel is being aggressed against on all fronts, and what we saw on October 7th was a massive assault, the worst assault on Jews since the Holocaust, and Hezbollah joined in on October 8th. This is not the idea that somehow if there's a ceasefire in Gaza, the other enemies will stop. That's just pressure, and it's nonsense. You're talking about Iranian proxies all around whose aim is to annihilate the state of Israel. And Israel has been trying to fight this war with the least amount of civilian casualties. But this went too far now, killing 12 children in a soccer field. That is, there's no way that Israel can simply retaliate the way it's been doing in Lebanon, which is in sort of direct strikes, pinpointed. I think the Israeli public will be very upset if we don't do something more drastic this time.
Ms. Bloom, and I have to bring this up, given your response earlier, when you say 12 people were killed, and of course that is unfortunate. How do you juxtapose that with the 39,000 which have been killed in Gaza?
Okay, so first of all, in Gaza, any figure you cite from the Hamas-run health ministry is unreliable. I also will say that most of we have, as far as it's been calculated by experts in military history, the ratio of combatants to civilians in Gaza is 1-to-1. It's the lowest in all wars. That's number one. And number two, no civilians would be dead in Gaza if not for Hamas. Hamas is responsible for all the deaths in Gaza because it both uses civilians as human shields and targets civilians in Israel. All we would have to do to stop this war and stop the killing is for Hamas to release the hostages and surrender. That's it. The war would have been over ages ago. So, I really reject the comparison. And by the way, you mentioned earlier a strike on a school in Gaza, but those schools are weapons depots. Every house, every kindergarten, every UNRWA school, there are tunnel shafts there. There are massive amounts of weapons hidden there. They're not regular schools, so you really can't discuss it in that context.
From what I gather from your response, if a ceasefire is not something that Israel is going to get pressured into, given these attacks, one would consider a retaliation. Do you feel a retaliation, the ones that we've seen in the past from both sides? Do you think that's going to push this war towards a larger West Asia conflict at this point? Are we on the brink of it, and will this lead us to that?
Well, on the one hand, I hope it doesn't, because nobody wants a wider war between Lebanon and Israel. And because, that involves Iran, that would endanger the whole center of Israel and Beirut. Nobody wants that. On the other hand, if we don't take care of it, we continue to be in danger of this repeat performance of terrorist groups that are running. You're talking about like the Houthis, they're the terrorists in Yemen. There's the Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and all of these terrorist groups, they don't stop. They're on a rampage. They are involved in global jihad, not only against Israel, but against the whole West, the free world.
All right. We hear you, Ms. Bloom. That was Ms. Ruthie Bloom joining us from Tel Aviv. We will keep it to here. And of course, there will be lots to discuss further, as tensions have only been mounting that we've seen since October last year. But there's hoping that there is some kind of a resolve which is achieved at the earliest. Thank you so much for joining in, Ms. Bloom.
Thank you so much for having me.